First of all, if you enjoyed last week's episode with Marsha Shandur about a story well told, part 2 of that will be next week. I'm going to be splitting them up differently in order to create a little Hello and welcome to another episode of Magicians Only. If you love magic, this is the place for you. So a couple of things. Today is going to be a very, very interesting episode. I've been traveling a lot, you see, and it makes me think about magic in a very deep sense when I've been traveling. I was at Glastonbury Festival where I saw amazing magic performances as well as incredible artists. It really was one of the most incredible, I use that word a lot for Glastonbury, but it was one of the most incredibly well organized things I've ever been to. If you imagine a couple of 100,000 people, and yet the thing just ran on time. I loved it. It was really, really, really inspiring. The theatre and circus worlds that were there, non-stop acts, variety acts. Even if it wasn't magic, it was inspiring to see how much people work on their performances and how much they dedicate their lives to being great and entertaining the crowds. It was just so educational. Then, as I said before, I did a bunch of lectures and performances throughout England, ended up in Italy. I was at the Magic Circle in London, which of course was an honor to lecture there. And then also back to my hometown of Southend-on-Sea, where I did. I'm going to talk about this in more detail in other episodes, but basically Southend's where I grew up. The Southend Sorcerers Society was the club that really got behind me and supported me when I was a kid in my magical endeavors in so many ways. I talk about it in my one-man show, how important these guys were to me. And what was lovely about going back to Southend Sorcerers after more than 30 years away was so many of the members are still there that I remember when I was a kid, a little bit older, but we all are, right? So it was lovely to see everybody and be so welcomed back, and just had a great lecture. So thanks to everybody. David Penn took care of us up at the Northampton Magic Society, and then Marvin Berglas and everybody at the Magic Circle. Just so great. I used to be, I don't know if I've talked about this before, but one of the jobs I had when I was in my teens, right before I moved to America, I was a magic demonstrator at a place called Hamleys in London, and also at Harrods, working for a brand new company at the time, this is 88, 89, called Marvin's Magic, run by Marvin Berglas, who is now the president of the Magic Circle. So it was great to see Marvin. I think I did it for like 6 months. It really wasn't for me. I didn't have any special training in magic demonstrating, which I think is very important. I think if you're going to demo magic, especially in a toy shop or in a public environment, whether it's a marketplace or whatever, you really know, you need to have the pitch down, and you need to learn how to turn the performance into the money-making segment. You need to know how to pull the cash out of the crowd, converting the laughs into cash. Right? So I didn't really know how to do that. It was very difficult for me at the time. I could do shows, but it's a very specific thing. Marvin's Magic has done incredibly well over the years as a supplier of magic sets and magic props to people who are beginning in magic. I think it's second to none. Really well done, you guys. So it was great to see Marvin. And then I ended up at FISM in Italy, which is the Olympics of Magic, where I talked and I performed. And I realized a couple of things. First of all, I feel very positive about the future of magic right now. I think there's some incredibly creative people. I still think we need to be working on learning how to connect with an audience, especially stand-up comedy or stand-up magic with a comedic flair, or even mentalism, anything where anytime you're on stage, whether it's silent to music or you're talking, you need to be connecting with the crowd. Otherwise, what is the point of getting on stage? Is it just for you? You may as well stay at home and just do it in front of a mirror. You have to connect with the crowd. It's one of the things that we emphasize a lot on Magic on the Go. I talked to a lot of people who are members of Magic on the Go, which was wonderful to see and hear their experiences and what they really resonated with when on the site. And then I talked to a lot of people who would love to be on Magic on the Go, but don't have the finances for it. And it got me thinking about that, because I know that it's expensive. I mean, it isn't expensive if you look at what you get. You get almost 1,000 videos for about $250, which works out to less than $20 a month. But at the same time, there are people who are dedicated to the craft who just don't have that kind of lump sum of money to put into their training. So 2 things I'm going to do, right? One is for the next couple of months, I have decided, drum roll please, thank you, I have decided to make Magic on the Go a monthly subscription site. Now, That means that you can sign up for a month or two. You can get an idea of everything that's on there. I mean, you're not going to get through everything. I don't care how much video you watch. It's almost 1,000 videos, some of them hours long. You're just not going to do it. But I would, if you want to get an idea of what the site is like and how much there is and how I teach and how you can learn and benefit from Magic on the Go at magiconthego.com, I would highly recommend you check it out for a month or two. If you really love it, you can then sign up for the year, right? Obviously, the annual price will be way better in the long run, but for those who want to study specific things and want to get on the site and look at those, feel free to go to magiconthego.com and sign up for the monthly fee, okay? It's way less and you'll be able to start or better your magic education. One other thing that came up a lot especially when I was at FISM, the Magic Olympics in Italy, was a lot of people asked me if I did private consultation on their magic, on their education, and on their shows. The reality is that I do that. I just haven't advertised it. I've helped a number of people with their shows, either giving them notes or helping them with the structure or how to make the tricks more amazing. I don't write the show for them. I kind of help guide them write the show for themselves. That's what consultation is all about. I'm not going to write a show for you, but I will help you get it on its feet. And I also realize that everybody has a different thing that they need to work on in magic. Some people are creating a show. Some people just want to put a routine together that they can do for everybody. There are businessmen and women who would love to have a routine they could open a talk with. There are people who want to do full one-person shows that have dramatic, emotional narrative. There's a lot of potential out there. And so being an actor, I've been able to kind of take the things that I've learned as an actor and as a magician and help consult with certain people about their shows. And strangely, not all of them were magicians. I recently had a couple of midnight sessions with a lady in the UK who was the CEO of a company and just really, really bad at connecting with people when she has to give talks, speeches to her employees, or even Zoom sessions. So we talked about a lot of the techniques that I use as a performer and as an actor that would help her overcome her fear and also help her to present better on stage. So it really is amazing how magic techniques can help people in other areas and acting techniques can help magicians and everything kind of coalesces into this Batman utility belt of tools that you can use as a performer or speaker. So I'll make it a little more public now. And if there is somebody out there, if you are working on a show and you want to discuss private consultation, then you can contact the team through the contact page at stevevalentine.com. You can send in a consultation request and we can talk about it. Obviously, my time is limited and I can only take so many clients a month. So check out stevevalentine.com, go to the contact page if you are interested in consultation. Meanwhile, let's get to the episode. There's a magical creator by the name of Chris Philpott. He is one of the most creative and amazing human beings that I know. He's the creator of the 100th Monkey Principle. He and I have also written screenplays and pitches together. We sold this show a while back to Lionsgate and to the network TNT. Unfortunately, it didn't go. But it was one of those kind of very interesting experiences. And a lot came out of it. The show was about the 40 Elephants gang in London. All of these female, it was going to be like an almost entirely female cast. And we wrote the pilot script. It was, it came down to the wire and it didn't get made. But Chris and I have worked on a number of things since. The reason I mention it is because during the research for the 40 Elephants project at TNT, we came across a book called London's Labour and the London Poor. And it was written by a chap called Henry Mayhew way back in time, in the 1840s, actually. And he was basically a cultural anthropologist. And he went through London interviewing all kinds of people from all walks of life. It's an incredible book. He went with the police on brothel raids. He interviewed everyone from prostitutes to people who worked in the sewers, to businessmen, to costermongers, and to street entertainers, which is why I am referencing it today. The book itself is great because as he writes the book, he would interview people, but he would write in their style of speech. So you really feel like these characters from London, from way back in the 1800s, that these characters are coming to life. and talking to you. It's a massive book, and it's often been one of my dreams to one day put the entire book on tape so people can listen to it. It's the past coming to life. But for right now, there's a start. There's a couple of people within the book that I want to discuss and read to you what they say. One is a street entertainer who talks about his life and his career, and another is a pickpocket. Today, we're going to talk about the magician because I think his life is fascinating. We're not sure exactly who it was because one of the things they don't do, or Mayhew doesn't do, is name the actual performer, but is name the actual person he's interviewing. And there are some theories out there as to who this could be, but I think you're going to find it fascinating. This is a street conjurer, and this was his life. It's the 1840s, and we're hanging out with Henry Mayhew as he interviews one of these street performers that he just saw performing. Maybe he's pulled the guy over, maybe he offered him a sixpence or a bite to eat in order to get his story. Let's listen in and see what he has to say. I call myself a wizard as well, but that's only the polite term for a conjurer. In fact, I should think that wizard meant an astrologer and more of a fortune teller. Yeah. I was 15 years of age when I first began my professional life. Indeed, I opened with Gentleman Cook at the Rotunda in Blackfriars Road. And there I did Jeremiah Stitcham to his Billy Button. My father held a very excellent situation in the customs and lived at his ease in very affluent circumstances. His library alone was worth £200. I was only 10 years of age when my father died. He was a very gay man and spent his income to the last penny. He was a very gay man, very gay. After my mother was left a widow, the library was swept off for a year's rent. And I was too young to understand its value, and my mother was in too much grief to pay attention to her affairs. Another 6 months' rent sold up the furniture. We took a small apartment close to the neighbourhood, but my mother had no means, and we were left to shift for ourselves. I was a good boy and determined to get something to do. The first day I went out, I got a situation at 4 shillings a week to mind the boots outside of a bootmaker's shop in Newington Causeway. The very first week I was there, I was discharged because I fell asleep at my stall at the door and a boy stole a pair of boots. From there, I went to the baker's and had to carry out the bread. And for 4 years, I got different employments as errand boy or anything. For many years, the mall opposite Bedlam was filled with nothing else but shows and show people. All the caravans and swing boats and whatnot used to assemble there till the next fair was on. They didn't perform there, it was only their resting place. My mother was living close by, and every opportunity I had, I used to associate with the boys belonging to the shows. And then I'd see them practicing their tumbling and tricks, and I was so fond of this, I got practicing with the boys. I'd go paint my face as a clown, and although I was dressed in my ordinary clothes, I'd go and tumble with the rest of the lads until I could do it as well as they could. I did it for devilment, that's what I call it. And that is which first made me think of being a professional. From there, I heard of a situation to sell oranges, biscuits and ginger beer at the Surrey Theatre. It was under Elliston's management. I sold the porter up in the gallery, and I had 3.5 sixpence out of every shilling, and I could make 1 shilling and sixpence a night. But the way I used to do it at that time was this. I went to fetch the beer, and then I'd get half a gallon of table beer and I'd mix it with the porter. And I tell you, I have made such a thing as 15 shillings of a boxing night. I alone could sell 5 gallons of a night. But then, their pints at that time were tin measures, little more than half a pint. Besides, I'd froth it up. It was 3p a pint, and a wonderful profit it must have been. From there, I got behind the scenes as a supernumerary. And at the time, Nelson Lee was the manager of the supers. At this time, the Rotunda in the Blackfriars Road was a hotel kept by Mr. Ford. Now, Mr. Cook rented certain portions of the building and went to a wonderful expense building a circus there. The history of the Rotunda is that at one time it was a museum, and the lecture hall is there to the present day. It's a beautiful building, and the pillars are said to be very valuable and made of rice. It's all let to one party, a Frenchman, but he keeps the lecture hall closed. When Cook took the Rotunda, I asked him for an engagement, and he complied. I was mad for acting. I met with great success as Jeremiah Stitcham, and the first week he gave me £1. Cook didn't make a good thing of it. Nobody could get their money, and the circus was closed. Then Mr. Edwards took it. He was an optician and opened it as a penny exhibition with a magic lantern and a conjurer. Now comes how I became a conjurer. I couldn't tear myself away from the rotunda. I went there and hovered around the door day and night. I wanted to get a situation there. And he knew me when I was in the circus, and he asked me what I was a-doing of. I said, "Nothing, sir." And then he offered to give me one of the doorkeeper's places from 10 in the morning till 11 at night for 3 shillings a day, and I took it. One day, the conjurer that was there didn't come, but they opened the doors just the same, and there was an immense quantity of people waiting there. They couldn't do nothing without the conjurer. Now, he always left his apparatus there of a night in a bag. Well, this Edwards, knowing that I could do a few tricks, he comes up to me and he asks whether I knew where the wizard lived, and I didn't, and Edwards says, "Well, what am I to do? I shall have to return the money. I'll go mad." I said, "I could do a few tricks." And he says, "Well, go do it." The people was making a row, stamping and calling out, "Now then, is this here wizard coming?" And when I went in, I gives great satisfaction. I went and did all the tricks, just as the other had done it. And at that time, it was the custom to say after each performance, "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to inform you that I've got no salary here and only have to rely upon your generosity for collection." Well, the plate went round, and I got 1 shilling and 6pence. Hello, I said to myself, is this the situation? And then I sold some penny books explaining how the tricks was done, and I got 6pence more. That was 2 shillings. I had 4 shillings a day besides, and they would have sometimes up to 20 houses a day, and I've seen 30. The houses weren't always good. Sometimes we performed to 7 or to 20, but it all told up. It was at night that we did the principal work, crowded upwards of 200 in there. Now, we weren't in the circus, but in the rotunda. I'd make 15 shillings a night then. I got a permanent engagement then. I made too much money. I went and bought a pack of cards and card boxes and a pea caddy for passing peas from a handkerchief to a vase and linking rings and some tape. And that, with tying knots in a silk handkerchief, concluded the whole of my performances. In fact, it was all I knew. My talking helped me immensely, for I could patter well to them, and the other wizard couldn't. I left the rotunda in consequence of the party having other novelties. He had Ambrosini, who'd done the sticks and string balls. But I was there 3 or 4 years, and that's a long time to be at one place. And then I joined a street performer. He used to do the fireproof business, such as eating the link and the burning towel and so on. And then I manufactured a portable table. It folded up and I could carry it under my arm. It was as large as an ordinary dressing table. We went in equal shares. I was dressed with a ballet shirt and braces with spangled tights and fleshings. We pulled our coats off and we began to perform, and all the tricks was carried in a bag. The first pitch we made was near Bond Street. He began with his part of the performance while I was dressing up the table. It was covered with black velvet with fringe, and the apparatus was ranged on it. After him, I began my performance, and he went round for the nobbings. I did card tricks such as the sauté le coup with the little finger. It's dividing the deck in half and then bringing the bottom half to the top. And then if there's a doubt, you can convey the top card to the bottom again. Or if there's any doubt, you can just bring the pack back to its original position. It was Lord de Roux's trick. He won heaps of money at it. And he had pricked cards. See, if you prick a card at the corner, card players skin their finger at the end so as to make it sensitive, and they can tell a pricked card in a moment. And besides sauté le coup, I used to do innumerable others, such as telling a named card by throwing the pack in the air and catching the card on a sword point. Then there was telling people's thoughts by the cards. Now, all card tricks are feats of great dexterity and quickness of the hand. I never used a false pack of cards. There are some made for amateurs, but professionals never use trick cards. The greatest art is what is termed as forcing. That is, making a party take the card that you wish him to and let him try ever so well. He will have it, although he's not conscious of it. Another feat of dexterity is slipping the card. That is, slipping it from the top, bottom or centre, or placing it 1 or 2 cards from the top. See, if you're playing a game at all fours and you know the ace of clubs is at the bottom, you can slip it 1 from the top so you know your partner opposite has it. These are the only 2 principal things in card tricks. Maybe you can do them dexterously. You can do a great part of the wizard's art. Sauté le coup is the principal thing. It's done by placing the middle finger in the centre of the pack, and then with the right hand you work the change. I can do it with one hand. We did well with pitching in the streets. We'd take 10 shillings of a morning and then go out in the afternoon again and take perhaps 15 shillings of nobbings. The footmen were our best customers in the morning, for they had leisure then. We usually went to the squares and such parts as the West End. This was 20 years ago. It isn't anything like so good now, in consequence of my partner dying of a consumption, brought on, I think, by the fire eating. He was a very steady young fellow, not at all given to drink. I was for 2 years in the streets with the fire eating, and we made, I should say, such a thing as 50 shillings a week each. And then you've got to remember that we could have made more if we liked. For some mornings, if we'd had a good day before, we wouldn't go out if it was raining or if we'd been up late. I next got a situation and went to a waxworks to do some conjuring. It was a penny exhibition in the Nook at Lambeth. I had 4 shillings a day and nobbings, a collection, and what with selling my books, it came to 10 shillings a day, because we had never less than 10 or often 20 performances in a day. They had the first dissecting figure there, a Samson, and they took off the cranium, and they showed the brains, and also the stomach, and they showed the intestines. It was the first ever shown in this country. And the maker of it had, so they say, a pension of £100 a year for having composed it. He was an Italian. We were burnt down at Birmingham, and I lost all my rattle traps. However, the inhabitants made up a subscription which amply repaid me for my loss, and then I came to London, hearing that the Epsom races was on at the time, which I wouldn't have missed, Epsom races. No, not at that time, not for any amount of money, for it was always good to one as £3, and I have had as much as £7 from one carriage alone. It was Lord Chesterfield's, and each gentleman in it gave us a sov. I went down with 3 acrobats to Epsom, but they were dealing unfair with me, and there was something that I didn't like going on, so I quarrelled with them and joined with another conjurer, and it was on this very occasion that we got the £7 from one carriage. We both varied in our entertainments, because when I had done my performance, he made a collection, and when he had done, I got the nobbins. We went to Lord Chesterfield's carriage on the hill, and there I did the sovereign trick. My lord, would you oblige me with the temporary loan of a sovereign? Yes, my good fellow. What are you going to do with it? I then did the passing the sovereign trick, he having marked it first, and then, though he held it tightly, I changed it for a farthing. I did this for Lord Waterford and Lord Walgrave, and the whole of them in the carriage. I always said, now, Lord, are you sure you have hold of it? Well, yes, old fellow. Now, my lords, if I was to take that sovereign away from you without you knowing it, wouldn't you say I was perfectly welcome to it? And then he'd say, yes, old fellow, go on. And then when he opened the handkerchief, he had a farthing, and all of them made me a present of the sovereign that I had performed with. Then we went to the grandstand, and then after our performance, they'd throw us halfpence from above, and we had our table nicely fitted up. We wouldn't take the halfpence, we would collect up the coppers, perhaps 5 or 6 shillings worth, and then we'd throw the great handful among the boys. A bit of silver, your honours, if you please. And then the sixpences would come, and then a shilling, and in 10 minutes we'd have a sovereign. We must have earned our £6 each that Epsom day. But then our expenses were heavy, as we paid 3 shillings a night for our lodging alone. It was about this time that I took up busking. I never went into the tap rooms, only into the parlours, because one parlour would be as good as a dozen tap rooms, and 2 good parlours a night I was quite satisfied with. My general method was this: if I saw a good company in the parlour, I could tell in a moment whether they were likely to suit me. So if they were conversing on politics, no good. You might as well attempt to fly. I have many a time gone into a parlour, called for my quartern of gin and a little drop of cold water, and then when I began my performances, there's always been, no, we don't want anything of that kind, and there's been my half hour thrown away. The company I like best are jolly-looking men who are sitting silently, smoking or reading the paper. And I always got the privilege of performing by behaving with civility to my patrons. And some conjurers, when the company ain't agreeable, will say, but I will perform. And then comes a quarrel, and then the room is in future forbid to that man. But if they objected, I always said, very well, gentlemen, I'm much obliged to you all the same. Perhaps another time. Bad tonight. Better next night. And then when I came back, some would say, I didn't give you anything the other night, did I? Well, here's a 4-penny bit, and so on. When I went into a parlour, I usually performed with a big dice, like 3 inches square. I used to go, call for a small drop of gin and water, and put this dice on the seat next to me as a bit of a drawer. And directly I put it down, everybody was looking at it, and then I'd get into conversation with the party next to me, and he'd be sure to say, what the deuce is that? And I'd tell him it was a musical box, and he'd be safe to say, well, I should like to hear it very much. And then I'd offer to perform, if agreeable, to the company. Often the party would offer to name it to the company, and he'd call to the other side of the room, because they all know each other in these parlours. I say, Mr. So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so, have you any objection to this gentleman showing us a little amusement? And then all of them are safe to say, not in the least, I'm perfectly agreeable if others are so. And then I begin. I pull out my cards and card boxes and the bonus genus or the wooden doll, and then I'd spread a nice clean cloth, which I always carried with me, on the table, and then I'd go to work. I work the dice by placing it on top of a borrowed hat, and then with a penknife I pretend to make an incision in the crown to let the solid block pass through. It's done by having a tin covering to the solid dice, and the art consists in getting the solid block into the hat without being seen. See, that's the whole trick. I begin by striking the block to show it's solid, then I place 2 hats, one on the other, brim to brim, and then I slip the solid dice into the under hat, placing the tin covering on the crown of the upper one. Then I ask for a knife and I pretend to cut the hat crown the size of the tin can on top, making a noise by dragging my nail along it, which closely resembles cutting with a knife. I've often heard people say, none of that, thinking I was cutting their hat. And then I'd say, now, gentlemen, if I could pass this dice through the crown into the hat beneath, you'd say it's a very clever deception. Because all conjurers acknowledge that they deceive. Indeed, I would always say when I perform in parlours, if you can detect me in my deceptions, I shall be very much obliged to you by naming it, for it will make me more careful. But if you can't, the more credit to me. And then I place another tin box over the imitation dice. It fits closely. I say, presto, quick, begone, clap my hands 3 times, and then lift up the tin cases, which are both coloured black inside, and tumble the wooden dice out from under the hat. See, the whole art consists in passing the block unseen into the hat. I love that. Wasn't that great? That's just, you really feel like you're there and he's just this rambunctious hustler who just is telling you about his life. I think one of the things that I thought was very interesting was he basically said if you could do the pass and you could do the slip, that's pretty much, and the force, that's pretty much all you need to do most card magic. And that was back in the mid 1800s. And you know what? He's not wrong. If you could learn 3 card moves, I think those would be the ones. Maybe a DL, maybe, probably like a DL and maybe a peak. And I think you're set, you know? You see, these street performers were amazing because they had the experience of doing 20 to 30 shows a day. There was no government assistance. They had to go out there and do the shows or they would starve. And so they hustled. Can you imagine 20 to 30 shows a day? You get there in the morning, you work until late at night. So their performances must have been pretty slick. I would imagine every trick was honed, every presentation perfected, every move excellent. Then you had to draw in the crowd, and most importantly, and this relates all the way back to Marvin's Magic, they knew how to get the money at the end. This is something that I think is probably the least talked about thing in street magic or any kind of magic, which is to get the money, right? I mean, let's be honest. It's like getting the money after. What's the purpose of a street show? To get paid, not just to entertain. That's lovely and that's very nice and all that, but let's be honest, it's to get paid. So you have to judge your audience. Like he said at the very beginning, he could judge when he walked into a parlor, he was able to judge whether it was going to be a good or a bad crowd, whether they were going to be worth him spending his time trying to entertain them. Same with the street show, right? You know, when you walk out there and you try and gather a crowd, you can tell when you look at the crowd whether they're a crowd that's got some finances that might be willing to give you money. And then there's the speech. You know, Percy Press, there's a wonderful audio interview by Martin Breese of an old street magician by the name of Percy Press. And he talks about his career and he even gives his hat speech. And it's really lovely. Most street entertainers have a very specific speech that they use in order to get the money. It has to be done before you do the final piece. You've built up to a certain moment, and then you go, before I do this, I just want to let you guys know I don't get paid to do these shows. This is how I make a living. I rely on tips from the streets. So if you could throw the money into the hat, that would be amazing. And you build it up. And a lot of people have Keith Fields has talked about that in my interview with Keith, and some upcoming interviews that I'm going to be doing with Billy Kidd and some other street performers. You're going to hear what they do, how they pull the money out of a crowd. So it was really lovely in the mid 1800s. You take that talk and apply it to today, And a lot of it just works. You're out there, you're working, you're hustling, you're doing the sovereign trick. I mean, my God, nothing's new, is it? This is a trick that people still do today. Put a coin in somebody's hand and then say, if I could get it out of the hand, can I keep it? I mean, I've seen people do that. People have done that to me, and that's still happening. The idea that he would go where the money was is also something really interesting. He was able to go get some lodgings, partner up with somebody else. I love the idea that he would do a show and then his partner would collect the tips, or as he called it, the nobbings. For those of you who are concerned, the tips the nobbings are like just the little tips that you would pull out of a crowd. Farthings, shillings, and sovereigns are all types of coins. The sovereign being, I think, the top coin that you could get off of somebody, off of a lord or a lady. It's just a fascinating snapshot into what life was like back then, and what life was like as an entertainer back then. And how, to be truthful, nothing's changed. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to do the fire eater soon. The fire eater is something else. Oh my God, wait till you learn how this guy made a living. As always, Magicians Only is brought to you by Magic on the Go. And just for the next couple of months, you're going to be able to sign up to a monthly subscription so that you can check it out, and you can check out and see whether you want to spend the full amount for the year. I still think it's the best deal in magic, even though I am rather biased. And I should tell you that I'm going to be posting very soon the gimmick that I created for the Robert Harbin Dippy Magnet trick. Now, that was a trick that I pulled out from way back in the past that nobody remembers. It's a fantastic trick, but you couldn't repeat it. You couldn't do it and walk around from table to table. I have since created a gimmick that enables you to do that. It's very easy to make, and I will be tipping that very soon on Magic on the Go. So look out for that. But go check it out, magiconthego.com. Also, if you want to discuss consultation on shows or speaking or anything like that, go to stevevalentine.com, fill out the contact form, and someone from my team will get back to you. Meanwhile, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Magicians Only. Thanks for checking it out. I'll see you on the inside. Till next week. Patient.